Let's rewind to the 1929 stock market crash and the Great Depression that followed. People were suffering, and Congress was desperate to figure out what went wrong. At first, the Senate Banking Committee was on the case. The committee launched an inquiry into the stock market in 1932, but it wasn't going anywhere. They couldn't get crucial bank records, and their hearings were a flop. With the committee so ill-informed and ill-equipped, witnesses easily swatted away the committee's questions. Congress appeared ineffectual and inept. The committee chair hired Ferdinand Pecora, a former prosecutor, to write the committee's final report. But after reviewing the findings, he was alarmed by how narrow and incomplete the investigation was. He convinced the committee to reopen the inquiry with a broader scope. What he discovered drastically reshaped the American financial system.
Usually hearings are named after the elected official in the Senate or the House whose auspices they're being run under. But in this case, Ferdinand Pecora, was so memorably and effectively theatrical that the hearings very uniquely are named after him individually. It was a national sensation. There was a depression outside, and here are all these people who are being blamed for it, being grilled by this very artful guy.
First, some background. Leading up to the crash of 1929, the U.S. banking industry had few regulations. Some bankers took full advantage of that regulatory freedom and began to abuse their authority with the aim of making huge profits. No law forced the banks to be careful with customer funds or avoid high-risk investments. Some also profited by selling low-quality stocks to the customers while misleading them on how risky the investments were. At the same time, some were giving secret sweetheart deals to their wealthiest customers. Over time, the U.S. stock market became overloaded with high-risk, low-quality stocks until one day, the bottom fell out.
This is the first time Americans, individual Americans, rank and file, retail Americans, began to invest in the stock market in any great numbers. Before this, people were too afraid to do it. So people began to do it, and they were egged on with advertising and this promotion of credit. So you could spend $10 and buy $100 worth of stock, and you saw all these giants of industry getting rich playing the stock market. And so you began to think, maybe I can do it too. And so there was this encouragement to borrow money and invest. And that, of course, pumped up demand for stock in these financial institutions. And the people at the head of those institutions profited by having more people invest in them. But at some point, it was a bubble that was going to burst. And it did. It burst in 1929, and we had the crash of 1929.
Back to Ferdinand Pecora. Pecora was a no-nonsense guy. Instead of waiting for the banks to hand over documents, he'd walk right into a bank, slap them with a subpoena, and demand they produce documents on the spot. Pecora didn't just gather evidence, he designed hearings that turned into media spectacles. Most importantly, unlike the hearings which preceded Mr. Pecora's tenure, he was armed with facts. The witnesses he called would not swat his questions away so easily.
The things that really carried the weight of this hearing is that the companies, the banks, the heads of these banks, of Chase and National City and JP Morgan, they couldn't evade the answering the questions. They were being subpoenaed, so they had to answer them. And then you heard the tales of people losing their shirt and the hardship that caused. He put those things together artfully. And you can call it theater, but it was true. All the things that happened, those were all true. And by putting them together, by juxtaposing them artfully, it made the public angry, as it should have.
Pecora called in some of the most powerful financiers to testify. We're talking big names like J.P. Morgan Jr., the most powerful financier of the time, Charles E. Mitchell from National City Bank, and Richard Whitney from the New York Stock Exchange. These hearings not only featured celebrity bankers, they revealed jaw-dropping, unethical practices, insider trading, stock manipulation, misleading investors, you name it. The highly publicized hearings led to destroyed reputations, resignations, firings, and even jail sentences. It also helped educate the American public about the nation's financial institutions and how they manipulated the stock market and contributed to the Great Depression. The public was outraged. The Senate hearings shattered the image of bankers as trustworthy and exposed them as self-serving, greedy, and reckless. This shift in perception, fueled by the behavior of once admired individuals like J.P. Morgan Jr. and Charles Mitchell, demanded greater accountability and transparency in the financial industry, a legacy that continues to influence us today.
There was so much interest because of the facts that he did amass and bring out. And the most important ones were just average people who'd lost all their money. And they came and they testified with this crowded hearing room, listening to these rank and file people, how they'd taken their life savings on the promise that if they bought this stock on credit, they would get this. If they put $100 in, they'd get $1,000 worth of stock. When they testified that Pecora would say things like, and how much money did you get back of what you invested? He didn't say, didn't you lose everything? He'd say, how much money did you get back? And the person would say, nothing. And he would say, and what is that caused harm? And that would allow the person to say, well, I'm ill. That was my retirement savings. I now have nothing to live on and I can't work. When people heard stories like that, it made them angry. It made Congress resolute and really want to pass and create these set of institutions who would be policing and making sure that it wouldn't tell the market what to do, but it would make sure that there was a free and fair market, that it was a level playing field.
The uproar paved the way for major reforms, including the Glass-Steagall Act of 1933. This law forced banks to spin off their related companies that sold securities. That way, banks could no longer use customer deposits to buy high-risk investments or convince their customers to buy lousy stocks. The law also prohibited banks from trading on their own accounts instead of on the behalf of customers. Their job is to make you money, not make themselves money. Lastly, it created the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation to guarantee repayment of customer deposits if a bank were to fail, an essential step in restoring public confidence in the banking system.
All those things are Congress decided would be, and it has proved to be valuable, the underlying principles on which our free markets operate. Now, we've fiddled with it and how much of this and how much of that ever since the 1930s. But we are coming on 100 years in which we can say these are the principles of American free market capitalism. And Ferdinand Pecora's hearings really got the public behind that.
So what are the takeaways here? 1, the Pecora investigation showed that at a difficult time in the nation's history, Congress could dig deep into complex issues and push through significant reforms. 2, it set the stage for using congressional subpoenas to compel even the most powerful persons and corporations to provide needed information. 3, it showed that laws to limit abusive financial practices and safeguard investors and depositors could be enacted with bipartisan support in Congress and with widespread support from the public. 4, it highlighted the crucial role of congressional staff in investigations. Ferdinand Pecora put in the hard work needed to get the facts behind the stock market crash and produce hearings that explained what happened. The 1929 stock market crash led to the Great Depression, one of the hardest periods in American history. The Senate investigation was key to exposing the wrongdoing and coming up with reforms to prevent future financial disasters.
Hi, I'm Jim Townsend, director of the Carl Levin Center for Oversight and Democracy at Wayne State University Law School. Thank you for watching this episode of Portraits in Oversight, which details one of Congress's most important powers, the ability to investigate abuses that threaten our democracy. We hope you will watch additional versions of Portraits in Oversight, and we hope you'll visit our website and social media for additional content from our civic education program, Learning by Hearings. Our educational resources are available to you at no cost through a partnership with the Michigan Department of Education and the state of Michigan. We hope to see you next time. Thank you.